In Anniston, Alabama, for months, Miya Shavone Marshall's family didn't know where she was. Then, nearly a year after they last heard from her, a discovery on Noble Street changed everything. But it still didn't answer the biggest question: who killed Miya Marshall? Miya was last seen in Anniston on July 30th, 2022. Her family says Miya had gotten into the streets at a younger age and never really received the help that she needed. But that was only one part of her life. She was still someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's cousin, someone who was loved. And her family knew her well enough to know that something wasn't right. They said it was unusual to go this long without hearing from her. Miya was eventually reported missing to Anniston Police on September 8th, 2022. At that time, she was described as 5'2", approximately 160 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. Her picture was shared. Local news outlets reported her disappearance, and police asked the public for information. But as the months passed, there was still no Miya. Then came May 15th, 2023. At approximately 4:45 that afternoon, investigators were called to the 2600 block of Noble Street in Anniston. A human skull had been discovered. Investigators searched the surrounding area, but according to the police, no other bones were located. Miya's family tells Murder in Your Backyard that this is the general area where her remains were found. At that point, however, investigators still had to determine whose remains had been discovered. And that answer would eventually come through DNA. The remains were identified as Miya Shavone Marshall. The same woman who had disappeared from Anniston months earlier had been found. But now this was no longer simply a missing persons case. The Alabama Department of Forensic Sciences examined the remains and determined Miya's manner of death was homicide. Her cause of death has not been publicly released. And there is something else we need to make clear. Just because this block of Noble Street is where her remains were discovered does not necessarily mean this is where Miya was killed. What happened to her before she ended up there remains part of the mystery. And years later, there are still questions. Who was Miya with before she disappeared? What happened after her family last heard from her? How did her remains end up on Noble Street? And most importantly, who killed Miya Shavone Marshall? Her family has already had to live through not knowing where she was. They had to learn that she wasn't coming home. They gathered together, they remembered her, and they released balloons in her memory. But simply remembering Miya isn't the same thing as getting justice for her. Someone still knows something. Something they saw. Something they heard. A conversation they remember. A detail that didn't seem important at the time. Miya's life mattered long before she became a missing person headline. And whatever struggles she faced do not make what happened to her any less. She deserves answers. Her family deserves answers. And whoever is responsible for Miya Marshall's death should be held accountable. If you know something about what happened to Miya Shavone Marshall, contact the Anniston Police Department. Even after all this time, one piece of information could matter. Every victim has a voice, and Miya Marshall deserves justice.